Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Langer. I'm the Outreach and Widening Participation Coordinator at Cambridge Law Faculty, and we're very excited to have the second session of our Exploring Legal Futures webinar for internships, vacation schemes, and training contracts. What are firms looking for? We're joined today by two members of Slaughter and May. So I'm going to leave you two to introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Howes. I'm a partner in the financing team at Slaughter and May. So I think my colleague and I can give our full backgrounds when we kick off. But so I do financing at the moment, very broad brush. We follow our clients rather than doing specific kinds of work. But I started off my career out of the University of Cambridge, which is how I came to be here today.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name's Nathan Mora. I'm a first seat trainee, which means that I started the firm in September 2023. So I've been here for about five and a half months. I was a student at the University of Cambridge between 2019 and 2022. And I spent my first 5.5 months here sitting in the Disputes and Investigations group, basically litigation. And I'm moving on in a few weeks to sit in the competition law department. So looking forward to speaking to you all.
Thank you both for joining us today. I'm wondering, just to kick us off, if you could tell us a bit about Slaughter and May, about the firm, what kind of firm you are, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I think Netta and I probably come at this from very different perspectives. I've been here, you feel very old now because I've been here for 13 years. I think I plan to be here 5.5 months, as he said. But so Slaughter and May is what we call one of the Magic Circle. So there are 6 Magic Circle firms. And they are generally viewed as kind of the elite UK firms. Slaughter and May in particular work for a lot of large corporate clients. So we often tout that we work for more FTSE 100 clients. These are the really big UK entity clients than any other law firm. And I think in terms of how I got to Slaughter and May, so I went to a state school. I was very lucky to get into the University of Cambridge. Don't tell Lizzie, I'm still not quite sure how that happened. But got there and really I didn't have a lot of experience in law. I didn't know a huge amount about law or the different options out for me that were out there for me. I met some people from Slaughter and May, and it was originally kind of how friendly everyone was. And it felt like the right fit for me. So I did a vacation scheme, which I think we can talk about is the main thing here. An in-person vacation scheme, did an interview at the end of that, did my training contract at Slaughter and May, and unimaginatively have been there ever since. Yeah, for me, it really was just finding kind of my cultural fit. But Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't initially sort of looking to become a commercial solicitor. I sort of was considering a wide variety of backgrounds, and I sort of began doing some applications kind of on a whim to try and get some more experience. But when I sort of encountered Slaughter and May for the first time at a college event, I was really struck, in particular by the sort of the combination of the friendliness of the people that were speaking to me, but also the opportunity to be involved in really interesting pieces of work. When we talk about acting for the FTSE 100 companies, it's not just about being able to brag and say oh, we acted for this company, when in many cases we can't even say who we're acting for. But it's more that the type of work that we do exists in the very center of our society. The work just has massively far-reaching implications. And if you, as an aspiring lawyer, are interested in law from the perspective of trying to understand kind of the nature of human affairs and how we interact with one another, that was sort of something that drew me to the firm, the opportunity to be involved in sort of such pivotal work. And even in my very brief period here, I've been involved with things that have just taught me so much, both about the law, but also about, society today.
Absolutely. So the two of you are obviously at different places in your career right now, but also you'll be at different places than a lot of the people who are joining us. And so I wonder whether, quite briefly, you could touch on the different kind of areas of that we're going to be talking about in this session. So those would be internships, vacation schemes, and training contracts. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what each of them entails and what you might hope to get out of it as somebody undertaking one.
Sure. And Nathan, I'll probably take the lead on this one, but you feel free to chip in. So I think when we talk about it, I think an internship we normally think of as legal work experience in-house at a firm. So this would be, for example, so to be a lawyer, to be a solicitor, you can either qualify into a law firm, which we call private practice, or you can go in-house. And that's where, rather than working for a private practice firm with lots of different clients, you work with it embedded within a company. So, for example, I mentioned that I work for Cineworld. Cineworld have lawyers who they exclusively employ. They only work on Cineworld matters. They're an employee of Cineworld, and that's what they do on a day-to-day basis. Now, similar to how we offer vacation schemes and training contracts, which we'll try and unwrap a bit shortly, an internship is where you go to do that. You get your in-house, your legal experience in those teams. So it's a very different experience, but a really interesting experience, where you can see how it's slightly different between private practice and in-house. Vacation schemes, which is something I think Nathan and I both did. So vacation schemes are really trying to give you that insight into the firm. So there's various different lengths and there's various different types, but what it comes down to is giving you the opportunity to go into an office, to do a combination of kind of various talks, but most importantly, from my perspective, you sit in the office and you have an experience of what it would actually be like to be a trainee. So you will directly see what Nathan does on a day-to-day basis, what it's like for your students to share an office with me on a day-to-day basis. And we'll get a real insight of, okay, this is what I would be doing if I got a training contract. Is this something that I want to do? Is this the right place for me? A training contract is then, so it's a prerequisite. Well, it's not quite true, but it's with a university degree route is a prerequisite to going into and qualifying as a solicitor. So a training contract is a 2-year commitment where you are an employee of the firm, you are paid a salary, and you effectively use that time training. So you go to hundreds and hundreds of hours of training sessions, and you also sit and do directly fee earning work. So you do the work, you learn from it, you're given feedback, you're supervised at all times, and you move around the different departments. So Slaughter and May is a full service law firm, which means that we have, if you want a legal experience, we can probably cover you. There's lots of different groups and different departments. And you move around, you do at least 4 of those seats, or normally for 6 months, some shorts once for 3 months. And you move around the firm, you experience that for 2 years. And then at the end of that 2 years, you qualify as a solicitor, and you can hopefully stay on and qualify as an associate. Nathan, do you think that's a fair summary as someone who's very early in the stages of the training?
Yeah. No, I think sort of, especially on that training contract point, you really sort of captured the fact that there's really sort of 2 sides to the training contract. There is that sort of side of your learning and a lot of absorption. You're sat with people who are a much more senior level than you. You can listen into what they're doing and ask them questions. And that's sort of the amount that I've learned by osmosis, almost as much as I've learned sort of directly by being told things. But then also, to sort of dissuade the impression that you're just going to be sat for 6 months, making copies and sitting there taking notes. While certainly there is some level of that kind of work, as you progress, and even from the very beginning, there's the opportunity to be involved in really interesting work. And as you continue and prove yourself in relation to the work that you're completing, you'll get increasingly more complex tasks. So, certainly not to feel that the training contract is some sort of burden that you have to get past. It very much feels like you're part of the firm, and if you do good work, then you'll be rewarded with better work. And so I find that sort of to be quite an enriching experience, even now.
Wonderful. So going back to a little bit about internships particularly, I think that's a good place to start. I'm wondering, to start off with, who are the people that might be interested in an internship and who might be eligible?
Yeah. So internships are the area I know the least, because it's not something, obviously, as we say, it's not private practice. It's kind of our clients who go in-house. But I think an internship, so what I would say as a general point is, at this stage in your life when you're considering all of the different options, it is worth getting as much different experience as you can. So I think for me, it is a lot about you've got a time now where you can figure out where you want to spend your career, and hopefully your career will be something that you enjoy for the rest of your life. An internship will be something that is taken normally during the course of your degree, and then will normally be during kind of summer periods. like vacation schemes, where we have pretty strict rules about where we can and can't on them, and they're all offered at a very similar time. Internships can be on a much more ad hoc basis. So for an internship, I think it's worth looking at kind of specific recruitment sites for the various companies. But in terms of who should be interested, I think it's a good option for everyone to consider. Nathan and I clearly both chose private practice, but it's the benefit of these things is you can see it. You might be surprised that you want to do it, and even if you're not surprised and you don't realize you want to do it, having done it, you can explain that in a training contract interview that I considered this alternative route. It wasn't for me for these following reasons, and that can be a very convincing thing to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that this bit might apply both to vacation schemes and to internships. But looking from the employer's point of view, Kevin, particularly, and Natan as well, from you applying a little bit more recently, what sorts of things do you think matter in a candidate? What's weighted in specific ways, and how can people kind of stand out to be ideal candidates?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say is I think it's really important that people don't self-select out without good reason, which is to say, I think a lot of people look at places and decide, look, they describe themselves, or that someone on Wikipedia, Kevin just now has used the word elite. That's not for me. That's not something I want to aim for. There isn't a specific typecast of people that go to any of these institutions, whether it's an internship, vacation scheme, training contract. The perfect lawyer doesn't exist. And there is no perfect background. And I think, look, being entirely honest, I think historically there have been people from certain backgrounds where there are more of them in the city. And what we are seeing now is that people are seeing that, feeling, look, I don't recognize myself in the city, and therefore I shouldn't go there. I'm not welcome there. That isn't the case. I want people to be really clear on that. Because actually, I think being really brutal about it for both a company, an internship, and a private practice kind of training contract, what we're ultimately looking for is someone that will come and operate successfully as a lawyer, someone who's actually really interested, someone who might come here one day, work for us, work with us, and frankly, to make money. And the people who make money aren't from a specific background in life. They're not from a specific area. They're not from a specific school. And sorry, Lizzie, they're not from a specific university. But they are some better put. But they are all, it's a spread, and they're just looking for the best lawyers. So what you are doing in both, when you're applying for any job, is trying to demonstrate that you will be that best lawyer. And honestly, the best way to do that is to show an interest. So whether it's an intern, whether you're working in-house, or whether you go on to do a full training contract, we, or the relevant company, will give you the skills. You've got 2 years of going around doing training. You're in a training contract. You're supervised for 2 years. You've got, how many training hours do you do a week, do you think?
Oh, it sort of varies, but I had just an hour of training earlier today about something which will be of relevance for other seats. It's a whole wide variety of things. You get to sort of go in all many directions and learn from a wide variety of people from all levels in the firm.
Yeah, so there's hundreds of hours of training a year. So you in the 2 years of a training contract, you're given all of the tools you need. But what you need to succeed is kind of your drive, and you need an interest. So in terms of what we look for, I think good grades are a prerequisite, frankly. So they are something to focus on. And getting your good grades is the thing that gets you through the door. An internship and a vacation scheme, because they're pre-employment stage, so that's giving you an insight. Again, one of the things people will look at there are, why does this person want to come to this scheme? What will they get out of it? Now, perversely, internships and vacation schemes can actually be more competitive in some ways than a full training contract, because you have a much wider pool of people who are exploring their options. So whereas you come to training contracts, you might have X number of people going after it. You can have many more go for a vacation scheme because they think, well, I might as well have a look to see what it's like. This will only look good on my CV. I might as well go to Stortford May for a couple of weeks. And so they are super competitive. So when we sit down and look at applications, we're saying, okay, what does this person want to get out of it? Why are they interested? Will they benefit from this? And as you say, Lizzie, I suspect that's exactly the same for an internship. It's what brings you here and what are you going to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that kind of enthusiasm and showing that this is something that, you can commit those hundreds of hours to, because, otherwise, what are you doing? What sorts of, if there were any sorts of extracurriculars beyond those good grades and beyond, the perfect CV that nobody really has, what sorts of things do you think people can consider doing? Would they be strictly legal things, or would they be anything else?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, Nathan, do you want to start by saying what else was on your CV?
Sure.
Before I run and say something completely different.
Well, I would certainly say that, for sort of my extracurriculars, there was an aspect of sort of, organizational work that I did in university and people skills. I was quite heavily involved with the Cambridge University Jewish Society in a sort of organizational role there. And I was able to speak a bit about that, and that was sort of helpful in its own way. I would also say that in terms of if we're thinking about beyond the perfect CV, I think what can often set you apart in that sense is having done some real deep and meaningful thinking about the firm. In particular, not just researching the firm, but researching it in a meaningful way. If you almost imagine the position that you're in as sort of an ever closing circle around you of why did you decide to study law or study whatever subject you studied in university? Why do you want to become a solicitor? Why do you want to become a commercial solicitor? Why do you want to be a commercial solicitor at Slaughter and May? And having an interesting and well thought out answer for each of those questions individually is incredibly important from two perspectives. First of all, it will make your application far more convincing. But second of all, from your own perspective, it will guide you as to the extracurriculars or firm research that you want to undertake, and also enable you to make sure you're making the right decision. Because fundamentally, this is a very specific kind of legal work. It's a kind of legal work that can be incredibly enriching, but it is not for everybody. So you need to think, is this the sort of work that I would like to be involved in? And if you can answer those questions convincingly, you're much more likely to be able to succeed, both in getting the job, but also in thriving once you get it.
Yeah. So I think I think I would probably oversimplify and say there's three broad categories of things you look at in a CV and a cover letter. I think there's your academics and your grades, which we discussed are super important. There's legacy around that. And that's not to say if you can have a bad grade that you should rule yourself out. So if you've got kind of a couple of low grades or something has gone slightly awry at some point, then be ready to explain that, but don't be deterred from applying. But I mentioned the importance of grades because it is something you should push for as much as possible. That second category is the one that Nathan has just discussed. So it's what things have I done that make me know I want to do this for a training contract, or if you're applying for a vacation scheme, it's a slightly softer test of what makes me think I might want to do this. In the sense that when you're coming to a vacation scheme, we know you might not have fully made up your mind, and that's fine. You don't need to overstate it and say, I was born a solicitor, I've always known I want to be a solicitor. That's just not the case. You might be like me and just have watched Legally Blonde and thought it might be a good idea. So that's kind of, as you say, anything that shows kind of skills. So anything that involves kind of negotiation or, soft skills, anything advocacy, even anything like that, where you can link it back to a relevant skill that you think a solicitor uses on a day-to-day basis is great. But there's also a third category, honestly, of just what makes you an interesting person. So in a vacation scheme, you will share an office with someone for, as I say, up to 3 weeks. With a training contract, that's a 6-month stint. So Nathan's coming to financing in a year's time, may well share an office with me for 6 months' time. One of the things I want to know, or we want to know when we're interviewing someone, are they, an interesting person? How are they going to click with the team? How are they going to get on with my clients? Are they a well-rounded person? So there's no one magic formula for a CV, and some of it will just be put on there something that actually reflects you, describes you. Don't pitch and try and decide what should I have done. Don't reverse engineer it and say, look, I'm not really interested in this, but honestly, it probably looks good on my CV. I should put that on there. It's what makes you actually interested, what makes you an interesting person, what makes me down. I put that on the piece of paper.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. For me, what I would be wondering now is, I've decided, I really want to do a vacation scheme. This is the path for me. I've done the soul searching and I want to be there. How would I go about kind of getting to that point? Where would I look for these kind of things? When do I start applying? When do I start looking, both, within the year, but also within my university degree? Um, this is obviously, vacation schemes will be something that you're more familiar with. So it'd be interesting to hear, especially from Slaughter.
So, when did you start thinking and doing that?
So my sort of experience with applying to the firm is that I started second year and realized that I wanted to try and get a vacation scheme for the summer so that I could broaden my experience. And then throughout the course of that sort of winter term, I was doing vacation scheme applications, and one of them was for Slaughter and May, because I went to an event by them and I thought, this seems really interesting. I think I could benefit from at least spending some time here, if not a broader amount of time. So I applied for the vacation scheme for that summer, the end of my second year of law, and had interviewed in February. From there, after doing this scheme, which was a COVID virtual scheme in 2021, in July, then I had a training contract interview. And so I went into my third year of university with sort of having accepted the offer, which is conditional, of course, on achieving the requisite grades. And so sort of, having that knowledge, certainly there is sort of an aspect of, it's often, if you're in law in your second year, if you're in non-law than third year, there is an aspect of, it can be good to apply early, and that's certainly the time that the firm encourages people to apply. Although I would also say, from experience of talking to many of the people I studied with, if you do go through an application cycle and you struggle to find ones, I would say not to be dispirited. There are many people that manage to find in the following cycle, or people that find alternative career routes. Some people I know in the firm who struggled to get a vacation scheme or a training contract initially were able to make their way here through being a paralegal for a period. So I would certainly say that, I think the danger is you can hear sort of a story and think, well, if I miss any one step on that journey, well, then I guess it's not really worth me continuing. But I would say that sort of that perseverance is what will carry you far more than sort of a sheer unbridled brilliance.
Agreed. So I mean, the honest answer to your question is, I think if you Google it, a bit of Google through, so every law firm will have a recruitment page, and on that they will very clearly state out what they've got in terms of opportunities, and it's similar for in-house roles. There's also things like when you're at university, there's various, the law centre itself, your law faculty itself are very equipped to passing on information about dates, etc. And somehow various ones had law fairs. So I went for a law fair at Cambridge, which is one of the first ways I talked to Slaughter and May, and have those conversations. And there are lots of resources online now which combine all the data and show you what the various dates. Just to give it kind of a structure to what that looks like in Slaughter and May terms. So where we are now in kind of early February 2024, our applications for training contracts for penultimate year law students and law finalists will open in June, so the beginning of June. And that will be like a 1 month window, I think, between beginning of June and the beginning of July for training contracts for, say, penultimate law year students and law finalists. That is kind of the last step in the recruitment cycle. But after that point, the recruitment cycle will start again, as it does on a rolling basis. And from September this year, there will be applications for the next lot of non-law training contracts. Then there will be applications for our winter workshop, which is effectively a much smaller and a much shorter scheme that runs, as you can imagine, in the winter of this year. And applications will also open this September for the summer work experience next year. So the summer work experience is a longer 3-month one. And then in October, there'll be another round of applications for the spring work experience schemes and the spring open days. So I think the important thing is not to panic. So particularly for those in your first year, I think it's great to understand what's out there. It's great to keep an eye open, but don't panic. Your first year can be actually a really important time to get your feet under the desk at university, focus on your academics, to get your grades. And actually, at that stage, you don't need to panic. And most law firms do all these things on a rolling basis. And there are things in spring, there are things in summer, there are things in winter. So I think I would get on the recruitment websites, get onto these websites that bring all this information together, speak to people at law firms, but don't panic. There will always be something that you can do. And increasingly now, there are also virtual schemes, etc., that you can do to make sure you get that experience, even if you can't physically go for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like there's a lot of different kind of ways that you can engage with getting ready for your potential future law career. Um, so to that end, obviously, a lot of people are here because they want to be able to kind of ace it, and if that exists, and to make sure that they do have the best tools possible to secure that. So speaking, I suppose, for vacation schemes, because I think that some of the skills might be different than what, maybe not skills, but what you're expecting might be a bit different than for training contracts. Um, what does the assessment look like? I suppose for you, Kevin, from when you get that, when you get, maybe not you, but whoever is assessing it, when you have a CV on your desk, and for you, Natan, from when you say, "Oop, I found the one I'd like to apply to there."
Well, I could talk to Slaughter May specifically our process. I think there's obviously a caveat that different firms do slightly different things, but so Slaughter, we don't have assessment centres, and so our process is relatively simple compared to some others. So what it normally looks like is for vacation schemes and open days, you will send in your CV, and you will either provide a kind of one-page cover letter, or you'll be asked to answer 4 standard questions which go to the same point. So your cover letter is there to explain, a little bit about you. That's the personal stuff. That's who you are, why you want to come. It is a 1-pager. 2 pages absolute max. So I would say 1 page is preferable. And your CV is the accompanying document, and that is meant to be factual. That keep that really factual. These are my grades. These are my experiences. These are the things I do, my extracurriculars, etc. But that's your factual document, and your covering letter or the answering the questions is your personal document. Then when you get that, there is a first stage process that goes through, and that is done by our HR colleagues. They will go through, and honestly, there is some filtering process that has gone very dark there, very honestly. There is some filtering process. So that is someone who's, honestly, if your academics are below a certain cutoff, then you may be filtered out early on. But presuming you have got good academics, most of those will then go through to an interview stage for training contracts and vacation schemes. I think one of our open days is done purely on a paper basis. But other than that, you go through to an interview. Now, vacation scheme interviews are done with an associate and a partner, and training contract interviews are done with 2 partners. And all information they will have in front of them at that time is your CV, your covering letter, and in the hour or so before your interview, you will be asked to do a very short written exercise and to read an article, and you'll discuss that after an interview. There's no magic formula in terms of this is the person we're looking for. But honestly, all of the interviews will take a roughly the same approach. It will be, we will talk through your CV. So we'll start at the top, and we'll talk through your secondary school, university, how you enjoyed that, what you thought about your grades, whether you enjoyed the subject, when you started first thinking about law, why you want to do law. And then we'll get more and more into, well, why do you want to be a solicitor as opposed to a barrister? Why do you want to be applying for Slaughter May or whichever firm you're applying to? And really, for us, there's no set formula. There's no trick questions. It is just to get to know you so we can understand you, so that we can understand, look, do we think you're the right fit for this place? Are you going to prosper here? Are you going to do well there? And are you going to be happy here? So there isn't anything that you can really bank on and put in and say, look, that's going to be the golden bullet there. That said, I think a couple of things that you can do to make yourself stand out. So one, a lot of people will have heard the phrase commercial awareness, the least useful phrase in the history of law, because no one is aware what commercial awareness means. Now, commercial awareness, I think, is actually probably better phrased as commercial interest. So that is, twice you are coming to us and you're saying, I want to be in Slaughter and May and I want to work in this field for the rest of my life. We want to know you find that interesting. Again, as I said earlier, we give you all the tools that you need to do that job, but you have to be interested to do that. And that isn't, we're not going to sit you down and expect you to be able to explain kind of tax law or anything horrendous like that. That isn't commercial awareness. What commercial awareness is, okay, well, I've thought about this. I've seen this in the press. I know about kind of interest rates are really high at the moment. And I know that has some knock-on effect, or even I know the cost of the cost of living crisis is going on. And I've seen how that impacts companies. So for example, I mentioned Cineworld earlier. Commercial awareness is a good example of commercial awareness is someone said to me, look, I used to work in the Cineworld. I got to let go because the Cineworld closed down after COVID because that company was really under pressure. And now I kind of be reading the stories about Cineworld and what's happened to it and how it's gone into bankruptcy. I found that really interesting because it's the legal framework, but also impacted people on a day-to-day basis. For example, me that lost my job. And that's a really good example. We don't expect you to be an expert because you won't be. We don't expect you to know more than the people in the room because without sounding too arrogant, on most of these jobs, you probably won't because this is what we do all day, every day. You have to show it enough interest that we think you'll be able to come into the firm and enjoy what you're doing and therefore get the most out of whatever the opportunity is. In terms of other good things that you can do to bolster it, I think, again, just genuinely have a think about why you want to do the vacation scheme or why you want to do the internship or why you want to do the training contract. And please don't write what you think we want to hear. So we do hundreds and hundreds of these interviews and you can tell when people have written down what they think you want to hear. They're very formulaic. They have certain buzzwords and actually express yourself. Have a think about it. Why actually do I want to come and do this? And tell us the honest answer. And then the final one is just to make sure you've actually done your research on the firm. So the advantage and disadvantage of the world you guys live in now is there is a huge amount of information out there. So if you come to a Slaughter and Me interview, it's really easy to jump on our website, find a couple of deals we've done recently, click through them, have a bit of a Google round, see if you can find some interesting articles related to that. And that is showing commercial awareness. It's showing direct interest in the firm. And that's fantastic. And then have a look on the website, talk to people and say, look, what makes your firm different? And then have a think of why that appeals to you. And if you can come into that interview and you've got the grades, you've shown you're around the person, you really are interested in Slaughter and May, and you really have demonstrated what you think you would get out of it, that is a really good package. Nathan,
I think all of those things, I mean, they're certainly true to my experience. I guess just from my perspective, having gone through it recently, just a couple of sort of perhaps sort of lower level tips. I think certainly true if you're writing a cover letter, and this is true for the Slaughter and May application especially, but it'll be true of any application that you write. The notion of writing what you have and not what you want people to hear is really important because it sort of links to another aspect of what you're doing, which is you should not write anything in that letter that isn't true or that you couldn't speak to. So for instance, if you are interested in a particular area of the firm, then even if, for instance, it's a small area or an area that you're not even sure you're going to get interviewed about or asked about, you should write about that because that will be something that you'll be able to speak to. So, for instance, in my training contract interview, I'd written in my cover letter that I had a particular interest in competition law, which is something that I was planning to study in the university, but it was also something I've been sort of following myself for years. And I was interviewed by somebody who works in the competition department, and we had a sort of a 20-minute conversation about competition law. I put competition law in that in my cover letter saying I'm interested in this because I thought that would sound impressive, but I didn't actually have an interest in that. That would have been a very sort of negative look at the interview. So it's not just an aspect of be authentic, be yourself, but you will not be able to be successful if you are not honest about your interests and what makes you you. And I think sort of seeing that sort of as a cohesive whole. In terms of commercial awareness, I think it's really important, to sort of see, I think as Kevin sort of insinuating, this doesn't require you to, have an economics degree or to understand every single thing about business and how one economic factor is going to change everything. What it simply requires you to do is it requires you to take a look at, what's going on in the world, take an interest in it, and then also try and begin to see patterns and begin to see different drivers that work and think about, well, if I was the company in this situation, what would I be worried about? What would I be thinking about? In particular, I think one of the mistakes people can make about commercial awareness, they think, well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the news every day, and then when we get to that article that we're going to talk about in the Slaughter and May interview, maybe it'll be of a story that I've already seen. But first of all, that's incredibly unlikely to happen. And second of all, that's actually not the point of commercial awareness. The point is that you're getting yourself to having read enough and having seen enough, and having thought enough that when you encounter something completely new, you'll be able to think about it. Here in litigation, we deal with a wide-ranging number of matters, and each of the sort of roughly 4 or 5 things that I work on currently are in completely different industries, including on things I never even thought about before. But once you've begun to think in a commercial way, you begin to sort of see that, and you can even link disparate industries together. So I really think, sort of understanding it in that way, it can be a sort of a calming influence, because it's not about knowing everything, but it's about beginning to know the things that you know in a better and more sophisticated way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially for kind of driving how people can think about their own applications. Moving on a bit to training contracts, although a lot of this I'm sure will kind of ring true in terms of examining what you yourself are interested in. Uh, what sorts of things would you suggest to people who are applying, both as things that they should really be considering as they're applying, and things that you would say are unavoidable in and top skills, as well as things that you would say are absolute no-goes and things that you should absolutely avoid doing as you're applying specifically for training contracts?
Here he is on, so I won't let turn myself off mute. I think in terms of no-goes, I think that there's nothing, if you've done something for a good reason, there isn't anything that will be a black mark on your CV. So say if you've struggled with grades or a particular grade, if you've done really badly in Roman law or whatever in your first year of university, using a hypothetical, not real example, then I think that's not a black mark against you. It is something you may have to explain, and you may have to say, look, what have I learned from it? But it's not something that blocks you. Equally, there's no experience that you shouldn't undertake. If you don't know what kind of law or what kind of job you wanted to do, it isn't a problem if you took a year out to think about it. It isn't a problem if you started off thinking, I definitely want to be a politician, or I definitely want to be a journalist, and then you had your experience of that and you realize that's not for you. This is all part of your journey, this is valid, and this is really interesting. I think the only no-goes I would say there are is, one, don't apply to everything with a very generic application. By which I mean, I think I mentioned this earlier, but we can tell very quickly when someone has used the same application for every single different firm. I think I would say it is much better to sit down and think of which law firm shall I apply for, and have a limited pool. There's not a magic number, but a small pool, then to apply to 100 different firms with the same document. I think sometimes it's tempting to say, I've got a CV and a covering letter, I might as well send it to everyone, but that will make it very generic. And actually what you want it to come across, particularly in your covering letter, is I have thought about you guys and I want to work with you guys. Nathan, do you have any thoughts on that before?
Yeah, I think that's definitely sort of true to my experience. I think, law is such a sort of a people's business. I think, this is important both in terms of selecting your firm, but also, when you go into the interview, we are a firm made up of people. In fact, the majority of people that work in this building are not lawyers. We have a huge team. And one of the things that drew me to sort of solicitor work, and especially in a big firm like this, is the opportunity to work with a wide variety of people with a wide variety of skill sets. So what I would say is, one of the reasons why coming to events like this and going to more events and speaking to people, and, what I would say is, you can reach out to people. There's public information as to like who trainee solicitors are. If you reach out to someone saying, have an interview, I'm considering applying, as a good shot, they might reply to you. But the genuinely talking to people, getting a sense of their experience, that will both help you realize, okay, is this culture right for me? And also will help sort of spruce up your application by saying, this is what I talked to a person about. I think one of the things that I sort of struggle with initially is that you with all that information online, it can sort of be a bit overwhelming, and it's very hard to actually get a sense of what differentiates these big law firms, because in many ways we are similar. But when you talk to various people, you have a conversation with someone, you think, oh wow, if I could sort of be able to say the things that this person says and work in that environment, that would work really well for me. And being able to have that confidence is going to just strengthen your application. It's going to strengthen your position in the interview. As much as it's about whether you're right for the firm, it's a sort of a two-way street. They're trying to see whether they're right. You're trying to see whether they're right for you. And in the ideal situation, you go into that interview, and as much as it's sort of a test, it's also a conversation. It's a chance to learn. It's a chance to test out your knowledge, to show a bit of what you're capable of. And if you view it that way, I think that's also just sort of a positive mindset to take.
So, I think what it comes down to is, so we're looking for kind of well-rounded people. So say people that have got different experiences in life. There's no magic formula for that. We want to know you're committed at the point of a training contract. You're signing up for a minimum 2-year commitment, but actually we want you to stay for years and years. But we want you to stay for as long as possible. So we want you to be committed to the firm, to the job, and to the industry. And we want you to be bright and to get on with other people. And beyond that, there isn't a magic formula of someone we're looking for. It could be anyone. You just want to look to tick the boxes. And I think a good way someone put it to me once is, I did something like 60 training contract interviews last year. And I think after each one of those, so 2 partners will be doing them. We have a conversation between ourselves, and then we don't make the decision directly ourselves. We make a recommendation to a group of other partners. And that is to make sure we are being fair and we are being consistent. So we've had an hour review, we've seen your CV, your cover letter, we've had a chat about an article, and we've seen your written exercise. And then we will sell you internally to the rest of the partners. And we will say that this person was fantastic because X, Y, and Z. So the thing for you to think about is when Kevin is going to that group and he's sitting with the other partners and he's saying, this is why we should hire this person. What do you want me to say? And then you just need to express that over to me. You need to record the examples in your CV. And the more relevant, the more ammunition you give me, the more likely I am going to be to succeed in that conversation internally.
That sounds like good advice, not only for training contracts, but for just about anything that you do to really show why you're the best person. We've got a little bit less than 10 minutes left, so I'm going to shift into some questions that have been submitted. But before I do that, I'm just wondering what one thing both of you wish that you knew when you were going through your applications.
If they're doing first.
Yeah, I guess if it less something that I wish I known, but more something that I think I wish I've paid more attention to myself. I think it's worth looking into now the pathway to getting here. In particular, the system for qualification of solicitors has recently changed. So now it's transitioned from the LPC to the SQE. The firm is part of a city consortium program of a variety of commercial law firms that are coming together, and you study with a bunch of other people. And there were things that, were both exciting, but also challenges that I wasn't aware of that sort of, that's quite important. I think it's sort of, this is more of a general thing, it's not really firm specific, but it's worth looking into, what is the process for me? What is the journey long term? If you're non-law, thinking about the conversion course, thinking about, how that's structured. I think having that sort of clarity of vision can sort of reduce a lot of the sort of stress that comes later on when you're like, oh, I'm on this program, what am I doing here? I would certainly say, if any of you end up on the SQE, you can write my name down and send me a message on LinkedIn, and I can advise you on what is a very new and a quite challenging form of qualification there.
And I think for me, I think I started by saying it. We're going to end by saying it as well. I think I didn't know any lawyers growing up at all. I didn't have anyone in the family. Until I came to the University of Cambridge, I'd never really met a lawyer. I had a lot of preconceptions about what the University of Cambridge would be like. And it was a lot better than I expected. And I had even more preconceptions about what a career in law would be like. And again, it was a lot better than I expected. Again, I think there are preconceptions. There will always be a certain amount of preconception, but really get the experience, speak to people, meet people. Most or a lot of lawyers are very happy to share their experience, are very happy to talk to you because they've been in a similar experience to you, and just dip your toe in and please don't self-select out and decide, like, it's not going to be for me. I shouldn't apply for this. If it's what you want, then you should go and push for it, because at the end of I love my career. Hopefully Nathan does as well, 5.5 months in. I was really lucky in getting here. And I think it's a really good career. It's about finding where you're going to be happy, and don't shut the door on yourself. And then, sorry, losing it until again with the second point, but it's just one preconception which I had, and I think a lot of people have, is it's not a problem so for vacation schemes and internships, it's not a problem if you haven't completely made up your mind. So it's absolutely fine to be exploring different options. That's the point of a vacation scheme or an internship. And at training contract level, we do expect you to have made up your mind by that point, but it's absolutely fine if you've taken a journey to get there and you've explored various things. Don't be ashamed of that. That's a good story. And equally, you don't have to just be applying to Slaughter of May. So we expect you to have considered why you want to work for Slaughter of May. But if you come and say, look, I really want to work for Slaughter of May, I have also applied for these other 3 firms because I think they are similar in the following ways, that's a really good answer. We've never written someone off because they've applied for a competitor, because there's lots of really good law firms out there, and we know that. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Sometimes you might be an amazing candidate, we might just not have space, or we might not be the right cultural fit for you. You should apply for a range of firms. Just make sure they are ones you're actually interested in, but don't just apply for one.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Just getting into some questions really quickly before we wrap up. There have been a few questions from international perspectives, and I, as an international person, am also all ears. What sort of skills and experiences do you think would help international applicants stand out? And then also on top of that, Kevin, this one might be one for you. How easy, realistically, is it to get sponsored as an international student or an international applicant applying for training contracts, and especially within the Magic Circle?
So taking the second one first, it just doesn't matter to us. We just want the best lawyers. We just want the best lawyers from wherever they are in the world. We've got an entire team that sits in our building that deals with kind of visas and sponsorship. A huge amount of my team financing are international. We recruit regularly overseas, so even on an ongoing basis, we've got a big cohort of South African lawyers. We've got a big cohort of Australian lawyers at the moment. I don't know why we seem to be focusing on those 2 areas somewhat, but it just genuinely, it doesn't feed into the decision. It's just not part of it. If you are the right person for it, then you're in exactly the same place as a national student, I guess, UK student. You're in the same position. That's the one. And all of the skills that you're looking to demonstrate, all of the experiences are exactly the same. So it's, again, don't feel you are different. It is the same position, and you should feel empowered to go ahead.
And then this is another one. This was a question that we received. How difficult was it for the 2 of you to get your first job in law? Which I think feeds into another question of, realistically, how stiff is the competition?
So Nathan, 21st.
There's no denying that, this is a competitive job. It's a great opportunity, and therefore there are always going to be more people that want it that are able to get it. And most certainly, there is always the possibility that you won't get anything. But what I would say is that I think the approach that I would take is to move away from the notion of seeing it as kind of an all or nothing when you're in application season. There's an old sort of Hollywood adage of like, if you don't have a job, then view auditioning as your job. To some extent, like making those applications be the best that they can be, and doing those interviews and getting that experience, that is what is success. If you've made a real good effort of it and done that thinking in a proper level, then even if it doesn't necessarily go your way, then you will have benefited tremendously. And even if it doesn't go your way immediately, you will find something that is good for you eventually. So sort of, I think, Kevin, you've spoken about this. It's just that sort of importance of perseverance, and the ones who persevere, and that is equally true about the job. Success here has not been based upon, if I've succeeded in my 5.5 months here, it's not been because, every single time I do a task, it's absolute brilliance and the associates are, getting a standing ovation. It's that, you persist, you get feedback, you iterate, you get better over time. And that's difficult, but it's a manageable level of difficult.
And about Lizzie, forgive me for being going to be vulgar for a second, but I think so. A first year trainee earns £50,000 in their first year, and when you qualify, you make £125,000. That inevitably makes it competitive. There aren't that many jobs where you learn to that extent. You're a training, but you are paid relatively well. So there is a lot of competition. I think that's unavoidable. Just in terms of some of the numbers, I mean, so we give 95 training contracts a year, more or less 95 training contracts a year. And that's, I checked this just before, we had 48 non-lawyers and 47 non-lawyers last year, which is quite nice. So there's 95 training contract places. And then for the kind of the winter workshops, which are kind of, I think they're 2-day things, you have 60 places. For each of the open days we do, there are 60 places. And for the 2 work experience schemes we do, there are 25 places. So again, the work experience schemes can perversely be more competitive. And look, it is competitive. You have to try and make yourself stand out. But again, you've got to get involved. You've got to be in it to win it. And I think it's as long as you've thought about it, and you guys are doing a fantastic thing now because you are thinking about it now. You've got the opportunity to think about this and to apply this and really consider it, so that when you get to that point, when you are in competition, you've already got that edge that others may not have.
Yeah. So coming to this webinar is the first step, or hopefully one of the first steps. I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to wrap it up there. Nathan and Kevin, thank you both so much for being here. I think that I learned a lot, even having worked with you guys before. So thank you very much.